Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Business Corner with SADHANA. I am here today with my special guest, Lindsey Nelson of Opportunity Knocks.
Opportunity Unlocked is sort of my
Unlocked
for kids, and then Imagination Knocks is what I use for adults. And so my adult, since this is an adult audience here, and we're talking about ambitious fun projects, that's when Imagination knocks, and you're trying to figure out how to go from idea to done.
Imagination Knocks. Thank you so much for the correction. So Imagination Knocks, and that's the website, right? ImaginationKnocks.com. So Lindsey is a specialist in helping people who are starting businesses or just doing projects, really cool, fun projects, to get their stuff done, which I think is the coolest business ever.
Yeah, I mean, and it is the coolest business ever because, what I get to do is I get to deal with people who have these wildly crazy, ambitious ideas that have a complete life of their own, have struggles and challenges, and the projects that are the best to support are the projects where somebody starts at the beginning and saying, I have no idea what the end game looks like here because, I don't know, I want to write a book, but how many pages is it going to be? I don't know. Who's going to publish it? I don't know. I have no idea, right?
Exactly how my business got started.
Yeah. I mean, and so, and that's where the knock of the imagination is so important because, invariably that's what happens to us, right? Is we get this inkling of an idea, and there's something about that idea that kind of captures and garners our attention where we are like, I've got to pay attention to this one. This one's a very good idea. And so, and then there's a lot of things that kind of come up as we do this. And so there's a lot of different emotions that come up. There's a lot of different trials by fire of rendering a new idea. If you're a metal worker or a blacksmith, there's a reason why you have to plunge that raw material into the fire to get it something that you can work with. It's an interesting process as we think about this idea and the challenge of taming a very big idea, because the best projects, the most fun, resist taming.
And what I think is so cool about your job is that you get to see people actually get them done. Because I think lots of us have had those this is $1 million idea. And, but then we all have these little fantasies that are in our heads. But then the fact that your business is actually, yes, you can do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and so as an engineer, I'm predisposed to say, if you can dream it, you can do it.
I'm going to get a little geeky on you since I work in engineering.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because I love to work with the very futuristic stuff, the things that are nobody even knows it's coming and it's going to change our lives. And having been on teams that did that very futuristic kind of work, you have to be such an optimist.
Yeah.
But they get it done. It's amazing to be on a team of people that actually does that crazy thing. And that's why I love that you're bringing your engineering mindset to entrepreneurship, because I know that, literally people reach the moon. I worked with cell phones very early on before people adopted them. And we were working to get them to have access to the internet when nobody even knew what the internet was. And
yeah. And, and trying to stay out ahead of an idea is also challenging too. And I think that's what makes my job so rewarding, is that inherent optimism associated with, you can really do it. It might be hard. We don't know where we're going. We don't know the path A to Q. But I do know about B. So we can try A to B for a little bit, and there's C. And, if we keep going A to B to C to D, eventually we're going to get to Q.
Do you see kind of a process with these ideas that kind of emerges that you see over time, having seen so many of them?
Yeah, every idea has a very, very similar life cycle. And, and as an engineer, we talk about this as the design process, because, we're the people who are out there doing all of this stuff all of the time. And so we have our systems, but the problem is when you have somebody who's not technically minded, who's not an engineer by training, like the language is really, really difficult to parse. And so what I've noticed over time is that successful projects, the ones that get done, have 5 core elements, which I call my 5 Fs.
Okay.
So there are 5 elements associated with actually finishing projects. And again, these aren't in any specific order. These are just the order that I always say them in, because it works well for talking about them. But they all work together. It's a very organic, very naturalistic process. But the first thing that we want to do, first step, is focus. And I think this is one of the hardest things for those of us who are chasing idea after idea after idea to do. Is focus is about kind of picking one direction and going on it. And so to stick with the flight plan analogy, when you get on a plane, you're going to go to one destination. Now, that does not preclude you from getting on another plane after you've landed and jumping somewhere else and somewhere else. But the idea is if you were to have a plane simultaneously going to 16 different directions,
you might not get anywhere.
And you just might crash and burn, and so that's what I mean by focus. Is it's about committing to a direction long enough to get somewhere. And our brains do well when we can sort of organically give them space to think on a project. And so focus is our brain's main tool for helping us identify our right next steps. And so if we're not focusing, then we're likely to get ourselves into trouble. We're not actually going to be able to leverage our creative process in the same way that if we pick sort of one kind of guiding direction, one kind of guiding goal, that really works. So focus is sort of one of the first steps that I typically challenge people on. The next one kind of goes together with that, and it's the fence. And so, I spoke of this idea as this sort of like wild thing that kind of has a life of its own. And so we do, in order to get a project done, in order to kind of tame that idea, we do need to domesticate it a little bit. We need to give it some boundaries, because if we don't bring it into the fence, we're not going to have any place to grapple with it. And what typically happens is that there's 4 areas that you need to put up a fence. You need to think about your time. So when on the day are you going to be working on this project? The other thing that you need to think about is how long. How long do you want to be working on it? And so, this is also something that I generally work on, because if I've got 3 days that I need to finish something, it's going to adjust my plan quite a bit. So time is something to bound. Money, so your budget is something to bound. And I think that it's really easy to kind of get caught up in shiny objects and chase all the different things. And
okay, so this is part of the fence. Time, money. These are the constraints, right?
Yeah. So time, money, resources. So these are the things that aren't money that you're going to bring to bear. So if you're starting an online business, your laptop would be a resource. It's something you have to have with you in order to make progress on.
Like a lawyer or...
Right. Or, resources typically like a thing. So not necessarily people.
Okay.
Because the 4th is mentorship. So who are you allowing to mentor?
Yeah, I think that's the piece that I'm trying to get people to realize, that tap into all these mentors that are out there. And a lot of people, they kind of think they have to start up their business all alone.
Yeah.
Realize how much support there is to do
it. And I also say that part of the fence is making sure that you don't have too many cooks in the kitchen. Because if you're listening to 37 mentors, it's the same thing as going to 37 destinations. You're not going to get anywhere. And now, you can only go one place in your car, but you can have 4 or 5 people in that car with you. So it's one of the things that I'm thinking about when I'm thinking about mentors.
In a plane or in a car?
Yeah, well, again, planes can fit more people, but the secret here is you want to actually pick people who you can travel with as mentors, and that's a really important part. So there's focus, there's fence, and then there's feed. And this I call affectionately the butt in chair time. This is the time where you're doing the thing, you're putting that work in so that you're actually making progress. Because the enemy to getting things done is planning. The more you plan, the less you do. So what you need to do is you need to start doing, and kind of trusting in that gut, trusting in that intuition. And so if you're focused and you're not trying to do 38 million things, then your natural inclination of what you should do next tends to be more right. So these work together. The fourth F is field test, which is where, so you put time in and you put work in, but now you're going to get feedback out. And
that's another one I see a lot of people, like I just talked with somebody and they had a great idea, but they're sort of like, I'm going to like drop it on the world. And that's old school. Like that's how we used to do it in engineering back in the day. We used to go into our labs and we used to cook up our wonderful, amazing thing. And we'd say, hello world, we have released our new product. And sometimes it was a great hit and sometimes not so much. But now they go out and they sort of duct tape it together and they go, what do you think about this thing? And people go like, oh, the button needs to be on the other side. And I'd like it red. And then you build it after. And
it's all about those frequent loops too. And, and this is a really great way to, kind of just prove to yourself that you're doing something. Field testing is really the proof of concept. It's like, is this working?
I'll also say that I've been doing this I've been developing Course, a teacher training program. And I interviewed people. I got like a lot of input from them, but I hit this real wall at a certain point. And what I did was I just, called them all up and said, here's what I'm thinking. And I started hearing their questions. I started hearing their concerns. And then I started tweaking it. And then I called them up and I said, what do you think about this thing? Which wasn't even built out. It's just an idea. I just described it to them. And they're like, I could see their faces light up. Yeah. Then I knew, like, I'm on track. And when you hit that wall, if you're not reaching out to the people who want to buy it or who are interested in it, it's really easy to kind of just get stuck. Yeah. At that point, because you've run out of ideas.
Yep. And I mean, and you can even go to like your best friend, right? And just say like, I've been working on this forever and I just need to know what's good about it. Like, that's a great question when you're like feeling super insecure and you're like, is this all a waste? Get somebody who holds you in sort of positive, unconditional regard and show them your stuff and say, I really need to know what's working. It's a great way to get some positive feedback that can really help you when that fuel tank is exhausted. So that's field test. Fifth one is actually fly, which is celebrate your achievements. And it's sort of all about the idea of giving yourself a huge congratulatory pat on the back and acknowledging progress, whether it's a small step, like I figured out how to change the colors on my website button. Like, that's sort of my crazy example, because it is amazing how long that kind of thing takes the first time you do it, and then you figure it out and you're like, whoa, mind blown. You got to give yourself a party for these kinds of things, because if you actually acknowledge the celebration and you let yourself really appreciate your small steps as much as your big steps, it's a huge thing in avoiding the frustration and the burnout that comes with creating an ambitiously fun project. Because, some days you're gonna, conquer the world, and some days you're gonna barely get out of bed in the morning. You need to acknowledge both of them as kind of fitting in the same schema. This sort of relates to something else that I saw. Somebody asked a question in a different group about this concept of project sprint. And I don't work with project sprints. I work with
like geek talk for people who aren't familiar. This is a formal project methodology that's started in the software world. Now we also use it in engineering. And it is basically, you get a lot of feedback very quickly on your product as you're developing it. And it's like a formal thing that they do. We're going to do a sprint, we're going to work on it, and then we get to the end. So they don't set big goals. They have sort of big goals, but there's a lot of little goals in between. And each of those little milestones is the sprint cycle.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's truly designed to be a very quick. It's called a sprint because you're supposed to go all in. So like if you have ever trained running and you've sort of been running laps where you kind of jog and then you sprint for 50 yards and then you start jogging again and then you sprint again, you know, that effort about like really trying to wear yourself out entirely is a part of the metaphor of the sprint, because you're trying to make as much progress as you can, as quickly as you can, as ambitiously as you can. And I hate that, because that's a recipe for burnout, and it's awful and it sucks. And you'll see a lot of it in project management literature about like, you know, kind of a head down cycle. You know, there's a lot of guilting to try to convince yourself of the merits of that. I don't like that. It doesn't sort of honor the creative process. It doesn't honor the creative rhythms. And so I like to think of things as more ebbs and flows. And so when you're in flow, that's when things are kind of coming naturally and easily, and you're really kind of aware of what you should do next, and it makes sense. And so that lasts for a period of time. And sometimes the times can be quite long, and sometimes you can get a lot of work done. So it kind of looks like you've sprinted because you've just been in a really good, solid state of flow. Right. You've having a blast. It's been really fun. And then you get tired, or I
call it the fallow period. I think it's an important part of the creative process.
Yeah.
You have to recognize, like, it's time to take a nap. It is time to shut down. It's time to go for a walk. And sometimes it feels like you're just really stuck, but you have to, like, once you trust it, once you've gone through it, then you know, like, it's okay. It's okay to pause. It's okay to just soften. It's okay to just wait. It's on its way.
Yeah, and so this is what I would call an ebb period, is sort of what you're calling the follow period. I would call the ebb period. And
I like that. It's like the
thing that you want to do during your ebb periods is kind of allow yourself to kind of celebrate and bask in your achievements. Because what that'll do for you is it'll give you space to breathe and give you space to rest, which is critical. You need that. But what it'll also do is it'll keep your success top of mind. And that when your success is top of mind, then that gives space for that creative energy to speak again, and enable you to enter into that next period of flow.
Oh, I love that.
Because when you take some time to really celebrate your achievements, there's going to be that niggly part of your brain that's like, oh, you should do this next. And that's the marker of how you transition from ebbs to flows, is sort of like the flow lasts as long as your brain can kind of keep progress on sort of an appreciable scale within your human system. The ebbs are sort of like that natural period of celebration, in keeping your successes in the top of mind will cue in that, I wonder what I should do this next. And that sort of do this next, that's sort of the indication that you're on your natural rhythm of creativity. You're on the natural rhythm towards finishing projects, because you need both. You need both the ebb and the flow. They work together. They work hand in hand. And so that's a really critical piece of that. Now, I can say that, but at the same time,
this is, to me personally, a little bit of my personal thing about engineering being a kind of very masculine world, that I've tried to speak to people about this, but, you know, it's just hard to speak in that world. That, you know, I think this is a more feminine approach of recognizing the sort of natural cycles of, you know, creativity and things. I mean, personally, you know, I feel like that, you know, push forward all the time is a sort of, you know, more masculine type of energy. And I feel like sometimes they need to honor that women can bring in this other creative kind of energy into the space and another way of working.
Yeah, well, I mean, I also think that the way I see it isn't so much a masculine and feminine divide as much as I see it as sort of like an artificial constrained in a more organic or biological way. Because, you know, the idea of bigger, faster, stronger, more efficient, you know, pushing, like that is very artificial. Like, you know, let's make electric lights so we can stay up until, you know, 9:30 at night, right? Like that's something that we've done because we're trying to maximize our sense of the days. But the artificial kind of pulls us out of our natural rhythms And so, you know, the idea that you could sprint and sprint and sprint and sprint, right? Like, there's some programs that argue, business development programs that argue that you should have sort of 2-week sprints, where it's every 2 weeks you're kind of working on a new sprint, a new project. And it's like going like, I get what you're going at, but that's not how the creative brain works. It's not how we are designed to function, because there's this natural and organic sense of some days your brain will go for 3 hours. Sometimes your brain will go for 30 minutes. You know,
I have to correct you as a cognitive studies major, that our brains were evolved to function. And I always correct that, because I think it's important that we recognize that our brains have evolved and are continuing to evolve, that they weren't designed and they're not static.
Right.
We have our brains can grow and change our everything, and we are biological. We aren't machines. And that whole idea that you're talking about is about this construct of, you know, not necessarily being that, recognizing our human nature rather than this mechanical, you know, every 2 weeks we can go on a run and then.
Yeah. And I mean, and, you know, and yeah, the idea is that the natural capacity of your brain will shift and morph over time, where, you know, depending on what's going on, you might have, you know, 30 minutes of solid work time, where your brain will actually like give you that sort of space. Sometimes your brain will give you a solid like 3 hours of space to do work. Sometimes your brain will give you a solid weekend to do work, and you'll get, you know, there are people who can write out a whole book in a weekend, because the brain just sort of does organically give some people the space, and some people that's never how their brain sort of affords them sort of access to the creative process. But it's okay. But the question we get to then is, well, all right, Lindsey, I get it. You want it to be organic. You want it to be inspired. You want to have an idea about what to do next. But like, seriously, I'm stuck. Like, there's nothing coming to me. It's not working. Like, I'm stuck and I'm unhappy and I'm irritated because this project is just not going anywhere, but I have no clarity about what to do. So you can kind of trick yourself into sort of getting the process starting again from zero. And so one of the things that I love to tell folks to do is literally schedule 15 minutes of work time on the creative project on a particular day. So like, if you're going to be like, you know what, I'm going to put the time in my calendar. It's Sunday at 6 p.m. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to spend 15 minutes working on this project. Now, the idea is that by establishing intention about that, we're going to make use of our subconscious so that we can really kind of tap into that. So if we spend like 15 minutes kind of reviewing our notes and where progress and where we've been, and just sort of allowing ourselves to sort of like, well, I've got 15 minutes and the timer's only telling me that I've been here for 2 minutes. Well, what can I do with this time? I'm going to start dreaming. I'm going to start brainstorming. And, you know, just by putting that time on the calendar and by saying, like, I'm going to take 15 minutes of cognitive effort. I'm going to show up for myself. I'm going to show up for this project in 15 minutes. I'm going to try to identify, you know, what 1, 2, 3, or 4 things could I do immediately next? Like, what makes sense to do on this project immediately next? 1 of 2 things happen. One is you kind of get to the end of the 15 minutes and you're like, that was torture. Like, I've sat here for 15 minutes. I didn't get anywhere. And then your brain kind of like spurs up and it's like, no, that's not quite true. You've got this idea about what you could do next. And you're like, but I'm kind of bitter and angry, so I don't want to enter into the creative space. So I'll schedule that for tomorrow. I'll write that down on sort of my do next for tomorrow when I'm less frustrated by the process.
Yourself off.
Yeah, well, you know, you got to do that. But the other thing that happens is you can kind of get lost in your own creative process, because establishing the intention creates this doorway where your brain just naturally wants to go through it with you. And you wind up sitting down like going, oh, I scheduled 15 minutes, but I've been working on it for 45. And I know that these are my 3 next steps. And so that's the big thing, that when you're trying to get back into it, and especially if you're trying to fit creative spaces around like all sorts of different obligations, is as soon as you end that work period and your brain is like, oh, I should do this next, write it down. Because writing is a form of cultural anchoring. And so when you write it down, what you're doing, and ideally, I really recommend sort of good old fashioned paper and pen, like writing it down through the hardwired neurological pathways of your gross and fine motor skills working together. But what happens there is when you write it down, then your brain has no activation energy. Like my favorite thing to do is to put a Post-it right on my laptop, and because it fits right there. I've got a MacBook right next to my notepad. Like I like to have a little Post-it with my due next. It's usually 3 items long.
I have a friend who just showed me this really cool board that it's like her whole wall. And it's like a whole bunch of Post-its, different colors for different things. And I really was intrigued by it. I guess it's like one of these, like, you know, entrepreneurial guys who promotes it. And she saw him at a conference or something. But I was so intrigued by this idea of this, you know, all of it kind of up there where you're going to see it handwritten. And you're kind of constantly aware of all these ideas that you have and all these projects, and sort of like, oh, I'll do that one.
Yeah, cool. I think that's called the Scrum board. For me, I find it overwhelming, because it's just like, oh my gosh, like there's like it does one of 2 things for people, and there's not a lot of overlap here. So one, it really does help people focus, because they're like, I can grab that one off the wall and I can focus on it. And so if it helps you focus, if it helps you achieve that first F, by all means. But what happens to me is I just feel guilty and overwhelmed. And I'm like,
you call it your guilt board.
I'm doing none of the above. What's going on? So it doesn't work for me to do it that way. You know, one thing that I do like to use as a tool to try to keep track of stuff is I like to kind of have like my focus word of the month or the quarter. Like, what am I actually trying to focus on? What am I actually trying to do? You know, what is literally on my get it done list? And the thing about it is when you put one project on your get it done list and you get it done, there's going to be another project to take its space. And I find that it works faster for me. And again, this isn't true for absolutely everybody. This is one of the things that project strategy is inherently individualistic, because different folks of us have different relationships with our creativity. But if we really think about, like, okay, what's the thing that I'm doing? If I do it one at a time, I'm going to make progress a lot faster than if I try to work on 37 projects all at the same time. Because what happens is every time we move from activities, our brain needs to switch contexts. And so, you know, sometimes our brains are really good because they're ready to do it. Like, you know, this is why, like, after, like, morning meditation, you might be really awesome to do something because your brain is wide open and, you know, you have no problems transitioning away from morning meditation. But it's been 90 degrees here in DC where I live, and I walk 1.5 miles to school from where I park my car. And the problem is it's so hot that when I get into the building, the only thing I can think about is how hot I am. Like, I've got, like, sweat, like, just pouring down my face. It was like I was crying the other day. I'm like, no, I'm sweating. Like, I'm just like, this is gross. But because there's not a good organic transition between my walk to school on a really hot day and my showing up to teach my class, I have to give myself 15 minutes to make that transition so that I can, like, sit in the air conditioning, like, cool myself down, like, hydrate, right? Like, these things are important. But that's sort of my project immediately after I've done this walk. And so, you know, if you're doing something like, I'm going to work on an online magazine and I'm going to schedule 4 calls with 4 different people, and I'm going to, you know, spend this time on learning how to do Twitter, and then I need to create these graphics for Instagram, right? Like, all of those context switchings are invitation to lose time and momentum and flow. Because, and this is the wisdom of a lot of batching, particularly for stuff you need to do, like, long-term in your business. It is wise to be like, okay, I'm going to do my images for this week all together, so you can sort of get in image creation mode, have a creative field day, and then get it out.
Right. Instead of like, I'll do my one thing. I want to back up a little bit,
Yeah.
and then we'll wrap up because we've been on for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to sort of back all the way to the beginning about why are we going to do these crazy ambitious projects rather than the thing that can actually easily make us money, because that was kind of the conversation that we started up with. The idea of this was the fact that we've had people tell us in our businesses like, well, you should just focus on, you know, the sort of simple thing. Like I know, like my business SADHANA it's pretty crazy. You know, I have a lot of people involved and I have a lot of support, and I also have, it's not like the easiest thing to explain to everybody, and it's taking me a long time to figure out the messaging and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that thing that like lights me up.
Yeah.
And every time somebody tells me to simplify it, I'm just like, no.
Right. Well, I mean, you know, and some of it is it's your animal, right? This is the animal that you brought in to tame. But more to the point is, if it's not fun and if it's not enjoyable, like we're just not going to put in the time and energy and effort. Like, so, you know, every time I've tried to do the easy thing that somebody tells me is going to make me, you know, a lot of money, and it'll be straightforward. I mean, it's been the worst season in my business because it's just not fun. Like, you know, my business started providing math, science, and engineering tutoring for college students. And, you know, the person I talked to at first was like, this is amazing. You've got this captive audience. Like, just go to colleges and talk to people. And I'm like going like, you are, no. No. Like, I don't want to. Like, big fat no. This is a whole lot of nope. Next to a side of nope. Like,
and now, like I love opportunity knots. I just think it's like
imagination knots.
Imagination knots. God, I screwed that up so bad.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Yeah.
That's just, it's imagination knocks.
Yes.
I just love it. Like, I just think it's the coolest idea to like project manage, help people with the project management part of getting into that crazy, amazing thing that they want to do, rather than, you know, like instead of saying to people like, no, you know, you should do something else, or I can't understand it. You're telling them, go for it, and I'm going to help you. And I'm going to help you. Like, here's sort of, let's put a little box. Let's give you some guidance so you can keep moving forward. And we're also going to support you through those disappointments, through the failures that you have at the start, that's help you to figure it all out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's what it's about, is, you know, and I think that if your project is going to be, if making money is one of those parts of the idea that you're like, I want to do this and make money, then we've got to think about how that integrates into your project cycle. But, you know, at the same time, the stuff that's going to be the most fun to make money from is the stuff that the projects you'd already like to take on for free. Like, it's the stuff that you're already kind of doing anyway, because it's just fun. And so, you know, there's a lot of points in the coaching and development process where it's about asking key questions and about showing up for people and being available and kind of watching where they're at as they go from sort of the various places of stagnation and frustration to a place of completion and really getting things done.
Well, I think that's a perfect place for us to wind up. And so Imagination Knocks. So it's spelled imagination and then KNOCKS.
Yep.
.com.
Yep. And so, just one thing real quick, if this is exciting and you're interested in learning more.
Yeah, you were going to tell us about your program.
Yeah, because this is all about, because we need to create in community. Like, we need to have supportive people who can cheer us on and keep us accountable to our goals. And so I'm in the process right now of launching the Completion Crossroads, which is all about going from idea to done. And so right now we are at September 26th, which is a great time to jump on this, because what it is, it's a membership-based program with just-in-time project strategy. The first quarter of the program is going to be really focusing on specific projects where you kind of have an end date. how can I finish this big, crazy project in 90 days or less, is sort of the guiding principle of the project strategy that we're going to be bringing to bear. Next quarter, we're going to be talking more about sustainable processes. So like, I want to start a business. Well, how do I create a sustainable content creation plan, right? Like, I'm going to be developing a project course for that kind of question. But
this is another thing that I love about your thing is that rather than you giving people a system that they have to replicate, you're helping people to develop the systems that work for them, which I love, because that's the only system that works for me.
Yep, absolutely, because it's got to be organic and it's got to make sense. The thing that's nice about the 5 Fs is the only thing I'm asking people to do is hold all 5 Fs in mind. So, like, when was the last time you celebrated? When was the last time you let the fly out, right? Like, this is going to be an important question of working with me, but it's not sort of like, and on day 5 you celebrate now. Like, we're gonna honor achievement, because I'm big on this as sort of keeping you in that highest state of flow. Because if you send off your firework and you're like, hey, I did this today, then what that's doing is, and then you can go rest and relax and play with your dog, or, snuggle a cat or a partner or whatever. Like, you've so many different things to do. But then when you come back, the fact that you celebrated will free you up to know what's next, for your project. So what we do in the Completion Crossroads is we actually have a specifically designed accountability system that combines rewards and support and check-ins.
So tell us about that program. It starts, I know that you have a special rate going on.
Right, yeah.
End of September.
Yeah, so through the end of September, it starts at $67 a month. That's a lifetime price. So if you get in on the founding member prices, like, that's going to be the best deal ever, because by October 1st, it's going to go up to $97 a month. Now, there's still a really great program. There's still a lot to be had there, but if kind of feeling in on the ground level is really important, and you want to have sort of the inside scoop on the really great price, that's $67 a month. And so what we do is it's project strategy, it's accountability, really tailored to you, and it is technical support as well, because something that I've seen as an engineer is, stupid problem, like, I can't get my WordPress site to do what I want it to do. So, we want to try to help folks fix that along. Now, I don't make any guarantees that I'm definitely going to be able to help, but I just know that that's so frustrating to have that. So I'm happy to jump in there and kind of roll up my sleeves.
This is kind of coffee money that you're talking about. It's less than $2 a day. And I was just calculating, because you have this 90-day program that is $201 to join. And that means that in 90 days, you could, for $200, have the support to get a project that you have on your list, whether it's writing a book or whether it's, getting your blog started or your podcast or whatever, have support, little technical support, and also just a community support, and also have mentorship. I think it's a screaming deal. I mean, I've been paying for coaching, and and I love group coaching way more than I like the one-on-ones.
Yeah, well, I mean, and the thing is what we're doing is we're doing a lot of innovative things in this program. So one thing that I'm doing is that if people ghost and they disappear from the program, we're going to proactively make sure that they're not paying and they're not a part of the program. Like, I mean, again, it's not a punitive thing, but it's to make sure that we're not just artificially bloated, so that everybody can benefit from. If you're showing up every day, we're going to be there with really high touch support. We're going to be surveying every member that comes in, asking, like, what rewards motivate you, what kind of check-ins work best for you. I am absolutely trying to build in from the ground up all of the support structures to really be available for folks in this program. And so, it is a screaming deal at $97 a month, right? Like,
it's a great deal if you do it after October 1st, it's $97. If you do it next few days, $67
a month.
Super cool. And
it's all about your project. And so the other thing that we do that's a really neat thing is we have a daily firework. And so every day in the program, what you do is you say, I've finished this thing. Like, this is my celebration of the day. I'm going to fire up my firework. And what
I like that.
is that firework gets tallied. And then with different, you can take your tally of your fireworks, and then you can go into our reward store and get a reward that speaks to you. So if you want like a Starbucks gift card, that's going to be so many fireworks can get you that Starbucks gift card. So many fireworks can get you sort of and that's what we're going to do is we're going to survey the community to know sort of what those motivating factors are, and we're going to put them on display for folks. And so when you fire up your fireworks, then that means that you're going to be that much closer to those rewards, and that have real value to them, because we really want to make sure, if you do nothing else in the community, what we want to do is we want to have you come in every day, letting us know, I finished this thing. This is my win of the day. Because we want to keep it upbeat. We want to keep it positive. We really want to keep it focused on you finishing your projects, because I know that if I can help you get that daily momentum in your projects, even if it's the smallest, tiniest win ever, if you acknowledge that, then that's how you're going to go from idea to done in 90 days or less.
So we call, in sort of the more spiritual communities, they call this keeping it high vibe. And that is what I love about you, Lindsey, is that you bring the high vibe. And I really appreciate you coming and bringing your high vibe about getting it done. Oh, and she put it in the chat. It's just the two of us right now. So I will take this and I will put it, by the way, the links will all be below the video on YouTube to Lindsey and also to the Sadhana catalog. Please visit SADHANA catalog.com, CATALOG, the American way, and Sadhana catalog. I'll put it all below. And we're getting ready to wind up. So thank you so much, Lindsey, for telling us about, first of all, encouraging us to go for the crazy ideas. Because I'm like for that. And then also like encouraging us not only to go for those crazy ideas, but then helping us to understand that there is a way to actually get those completed, and that it includes the support. Mm-hmm. I think that's the piece that people, they try to do these things all by themselves. They have this idea, I'm going to lock myself in my room, I'm going to write my book, I'm never going to show it to anybody, and then everybody will be in awe of my masterpiece. That is not how to get a creative project done. Bring and help.
Yeah, I mean, it's a surefire way to burnout. One of the studies that I saw recently was the sort of reclusive writers like Dickinson and Virginia Woolf, and people we know to be recluses in their creative process, during the times when they were most creatively productive is when they had the most correspondence leaving their house.
Really? That is super cool. I had not heard that.
Yeah, and so the idea that we have these stationary creators, and that's one of the reasons why I built up the Completion Crossroads the way that I did, is it's all about that community and working together in community. And that's also the reason why we're saying that, we're trying to make it as risk-free as possible to try it out. So if you try it out and it's not something that's sticking, it's not something that's working for you, we're actually going to be proactive about making sure that if it's not working for you, we're watching for that. And if it's not the right program, we'll try to help you find the right program, because it's about helping you go from idea to done. And if you need a different kind of support than what we're offering, we're committed to helping you find that right support. But the thing about me, and the thing that you really can't go wrong with about me, is that as an engineer, I can see the system and I can help you identify where you're going to get stuck. And so, this is something that I've just been doing organically. And this has been my crazy idea, is to say, okay, well, how do I take this thing that I'm doing organically? And I've been doing all this coaching and private messages with Facebook and jumping on calls with people. And I'm like, well, how can I systematize that so that more people can benefit? And that's the energy that I'm bringing into
project managing your life.
Yeah.
Managing your crazy, ambitious dream. It's perfect. Okay. Thank you so much, Lindsey. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll see you
all right.
again soon. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.